All right. Hey, what up, y'all? I am Lou. And again, it's Friday, so you know what that is. It's drinking with Lou. That's what we're going to do today, man. We're going to drink. We're going to talk tech. If you have any code, Python code that you want me to review, you need some help with, by all means, this is the time to do it. And we'll do it live, right? So we'll go through your code live. If you have any issues or any projects or whatever that you want to discuss, any questions you have related to Python, like programming, um, business, because I do own my own business. Um, Again, man, feel free to ask. So, but before we get started, um, I'm just trying to confirm that it's actually working on YouTube. Because for some reason, I feel that it's not streaming yet on YouTube. Um, because I'm actually streaming right now on Twitch and YouTube in the same time, and I know Twitch is fine, but hopefully, any of y'all who are joining from YouTube, if you could confirm on your side, that would be awesome because it almost seems like at least it makes it seem that I'm not streaming on YouTube, but it said that I am live though. It just doesn't seem like it, I guess. Said that I am live though. Okay, there it goes. Yep, never mind. I don't know why it's acting up. It's not showing properly. All right, either way, the guys, I am live. So again, those of you who are joining, I am Lou. Today's Friday. We're going to drink. It's drinking with Lou. Let me know what you are drinking right now. You know, put it in the chat. You know, let me. I'm glad. I'll be glad to hear your favorite drinks and what you recommend, and I'll share with you what I'm drinking. And again, it's all about drinking. That's what's called drinking with Lou, and of course talking about tech. So you have any questions related to programming, you want to talk, you have any question related to how to get your foot in the door, how to become a programmer, how to be a freelancer, or start your own business, right, and start kind of doing work on your own. I'd be more than happy to kind of give you my input, right, my advice, at least on what I have learned and done. And then also we're going to talk about code. So if you have any code base that you want me to review, you have any issue code related that you want me to look into, to solve, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and that's when I first started this drinking with Lou. We actually solved some issues, live. Went through it, solved it, got it to work. So hey, if you have anything, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it, and maybe we could try to figure it out. So, and I'm kind of waiting for more people to join. Let's talk about what am I drinking today. So again, I'm testing out. I've been into tequilas lately, right? So that's one of my drinks of choice, tequila. I enjoy bourbon and whiskey. Haven't done any lately, but I do like bourbon and whiskey. But for now, I've been doing tequila. So this is the one that I'm testing out, trying out today. Cabo, Wabo tequila. So not sure if any of y'all have had it. What y'all think? For me, this is my first time tasting it, and I'll give you my feedback on what I think. I believe this one was, what was the price on this? Like 35? I think that's what it was, $35. So let's open it up and give it a taste. The smell's good. I gotta say, you can smell that agave. That agave is strong and it smells good, dude. The one that I tasted last week, what was it? I think I still have the bottle. Casa Mexico, I think that's what it was called. And I wasn't that big of a fan of it at all. Kind of had that vanilla smell, but you don't really smell the agaves at all. You smell more like the alcohol. This one, dude, the agave's like in your face. That's awesome, man. That is awesome. So I gotta say, from a smell standpoint, it's on point, man. It smells real, real good. So I can't. Let me taste it. Their taste is good. It's not bad. It feels like maybe little lime. Very little lime. Let's see what is it. What am I tasting? Um, Spicy lime, full agave flavor. So I would say right now the agave flavor is there. Like I could smell it. It's real intense, and I love that. I love smelling the agave. I'm a big fan of that, and I do taste that lime, taste to it as well. I like it. Gotta say, this is the one that I like. I paid 35 for it, so it's not bad for a 35 dollar bottle. I would recommend this, man. From a taste, from a flavor, I like it. Again, I'm not a tequila guy. I'm not a tequila expert. I just lately been getting into more to tequilas. That's my drink of choice. So I'm just giving you my very average Joe opinion if I like it or not, right? There may be other experts in this area that will say, oh, you can find something better than that. And that's fine. You probably can. That's not the point of this. I'm just trying different ones, um, tasting it and telling you what I think of it. What, from a average consumer, what can I tell right away, right? From a flavor, from a smell, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and so on. And this one I like. This is the one that I will buy again. The smell, dude, the smell, like, I don't even know how to explain it, dude. It is so good. It's one of those drinks where I could just smell it all night. It smells good. I'm a big fan of it, dude. I'm glad I bought that bottle because it is awesome. It really, really is. So I'm going to give it a few minutes before we get into any topics. Try to give some people some time to come in, and then we'll kind of start going in. I got a few topics to talk about. If anybody has any code base to review, we'll do that. But if we don't get anybody, there is no code base to review. Some of the topics would be how, as a programmer, right? So I'm speaking more for people that are software developers and engineers. What is the best way to move up, right? So if you're somebody who, you actually have a desire, like you want to be able to move up the ladder, right? How do you do that? What is the best way? I'll kind of give you my feedback, my opinion, what you could do. And then that will be one subject we'll talk about in a few. Another area that we'll talk about would be those of you who are interested on starting your own software type business. When I say software, let's say freelancers. Those of you who are thinking of doing freelancing, right? Where you're gonna build an app for a client, then you're gonna build another app for a client, and so on. I'm gonna tell you some of the stuff to expect that I have went through myself. And how to best protect yourself, right? When you do that, because there's some challenges if you don't do it right. And again, we'll talk about that in a few. So give it a few more minutes. Once we get a few more people, get some people to drop in, then we'll kind of discuss some of these. As we're talking about some of these items, if if anybody's dropping in and you do have a question related to code, like, hey, I have this code base to review, put it in the chat, man. Put it in the chat. That's something that I really do want to go over with some of y'all. One of the things I'm gonna share with y'all as well is going to be a project that I'm working on. So this is actually an app that my business owns, right? We're building. It's a SaaS platform that we're building. We're working on. I have one of my somebody from my team right now doing a lot of testing on the app as we speak. You know, we're testing for any issues. We're testing the functionality, the UI aspect of it from a desktop, from a mobile. Does it work well in all the browsers? Safari, Chrome, Firefox. Does it work well in different OSs, right? Mobile, iOS, Android, of course, you know, Windows. So either way, they're testing that out, and I'll kind of share that later on with everybody on this app that I've been building on. I'll be releasing the beta version probably in the next 2 weeks. So, you know, any of y'all that want to test it out, you know, could be more than welcome to test out the app, you know, for free, you know, no charge. And, you know, I'll be very open to any feedback that I could get from y'all. Again, those of y'all who are joining, man, appreciate it. It's Drinking with Lou. I am drinking some tequila. That's my drink of choice. So the drink that I'm drinking is Cabo Wabo tequila. I actually like it, man. I gotta say, I've been into tequilas lately. This tequila smells real good, dude. It's like real good, and it has that little lime taste to it. So I would strongly recommend this. Anybody who's a tequila drinker, I would recommend it. And leave in the chat, those of y'all who are drinking as well, put in the chat. I'm interested to see what y'all are drinking as well. You know, any recommendations that you may have, tequilas or bourbons or whiskeys. Because normally those are my drink of choice. Bourbon, whiskey, and tequila. So be more than happy to hear what you recommend, what you're drinking. And yeah, again. So again, if y'all have any questions related to Codebase where you want me to review your code, or maybe you're stuck on a project, maybe you want some help, this is the time. Drop it in the chat. I'd be more than happy to jump on it live and we could try to solve that issue. So, you know, just putting it out there. If you're not sure, if you don't want to drop in, of course, any code or any of that information on there, you're more than happy to, and I'm going to put it in the chat, email me at contact@iamblue.net. So I just put in the chat. You know, you could email me at that email, and I'm actually have my Microsoft Outlook open. So any email that come in, I'll be out in the lookout, and then of course be more than happy to review any issues or code that you want to talk about. Before we get started, because I've been getting this question a lot. So I made a few videos, and one of them happens to be downloading files from Sharepoint. So some of y'all may have seen it already. If you haven't, you can go check it out on my channel. So it's pretty much, again, using Python, downloading files from Sharepoint. And a lot of y'all have success, like, hey, I got comments back, hey, appreciate it, thank you, everything worked fine. But I've been getting one specific message back from a few people, a handful of people, related to, hey, I'm getting an error message when I'm connecting to SharePoint. And then when I read that error message, it relates to, let me try to find one right quick. And that's probably the best way to kind of show y'all what this error, ultimately what it is. But what's happening is, the people are having issues when you have multi-factor authentication set, right? And that's one of the issues. So using Shareplump does not work with multi-factor authentication. So I am starting to look at some other packages and see what I could figure out on another option, or just building my own package, you know, connecting directly to Microsoft API to be able to authenticate and of course download and do all of that stuff. But I'm trying to find the error message that it seems that a lot of people are having. So just give me a quick second. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Where is it at? I know I have seen it many times, and maybe some of y'all have had this issue as well. But I have seen this error many times where people are like, hey, I tried it, but I couldn't connect. You know what? I think it's on the other video. I'm trying to just find the comments right quick. Is this it? Let me see. There it goes. So it's pretty much saying, Office error message takes an exception. Error authenticating against Office 365. Invalid. That's not it. Which one was it? Damn it! I think it came in. I'm trying to find the actual. There, I think of this one. There it goes. Access has been blocked by conditioning access policy. So in Microsoft, so the way it works is those of you who are using SharePoint, for example, most likely you have an Office 365 account. Right nowadays, most people they're using Office 365. They're not using the SharePoint on-prem. Some are, but most are not. So that means let's say if you work for a company, you have an Office 365 account, you have a SharePoint site, all of that, it's using the Azure, what is it called? The Azure, trying to think of the proper name, but either way, it's authenticating through the Azure, damn it, I can't think of the name, what is it called, man? Let me see. I'm trying to log into the Azure account right now. What is it called? I know what it is, man. I don't know why I just can't think of it. It's on the top tip of my. Damn it. Either way, it authenticating through the Azure not resource group, but the authentication when you log in, it's being managed. It's being managed from the Azure side, and normally an admin, for example, whoever your SharePoint admin, they're able to go in and they're able to make changes. That's what is called conditional policies. They're able to add conditional policies. A good example of a conditional policy would be, hey, everybody that has an account, right, that's part of the Office 365, tenant, like everybody who's part of the organization, the admin could add a policy to that, a conditional policy that says, in order for them to connect to be able to log in and have access to any of Microsoft services, in this case it would be SharePoint, they have to be, let's say, located in a specific region. Let's just say US, right? You got a US company, they could narrow it down where like you have to be located in the US in order to have access to be able to log in to the Microsoft corporate accounts, which would be SharePoint, things of that nature. That's where conditional policies come in place. Conditional access policies. You could set those kind of rules. You could also set rules, for example, only Windows operating systems are able to access, let's say Office 365 resources. You're able to do that, or Mac, right? Let's say if you have a company where everybody has Mac, you could have it where it's like, you gotta have a Mac in order to access, the resources. And then there's those rules will prevent you if you're trying to log in from a non-Mac OS it won't let you. Again, you'll get some kind of error, some kind of conditioning access error. So a lot of people I'm seeing, they're getting that conditional access error, and most of them are getting the one that relates to multi-factor authentication. So again, that kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, that um, you can't, with SharePlump, you connect to SharePoint with multi-factor authentication. You could connect with your username and password, but if your organization has multi-factor authentication set up, you're gonna have issues with SharePlump. So just kind of FYI, those of y'all who are watching, or maybe come back later and watch, if you're having that conditional access policy error, most of the time it's going to be most likely related to multi-factor authentication if your company had that set up, or it's going to be related to some kind of other policy the company has set up. The other policy, again, could be operating system based, it could be IP, like region based. A good example would be IP would mean they would whitelist their internal like VPN IP addresses, right? So a lot of companies, especially nowadays because of COVID, people are working remote. So what they do is you got to log into a VPN. As you connect to that VPN, which is a network, right? That network would ultimately give you access to company resources, right? It could be company servers or company databases or whatever it may be. Well, your admin for SharePoint, or I guess Office 365, they could put conditional rules that say only allow anybody that's trying to access, let's say SharePoint, for example, that's coming from this specific IP address. Which means if you're trying to log in to Office 365 but not be logged into the company network, you'll get an error. I mean, you won't be able to log in. So you have the ability to do that in the configuration. It just all depends, right? And that's where it gets very hard to debug sometimes, to really tell what the issue is. Like those of y'all who are having issues logging in to SharePoint, like one of my videos I made downloading files from SharePoint. So just kind of keep that in mind, man. It relates to a lot of the configuration that your corporation has set up. If you're not sure what that is, ask ask your admin, and try to figure out, do they have any conditional access policies set up? That's the proper name, conditional access policies. And if they do have those policies set up, what are they? Is it multi-factor authentication? Is it IP based? Is it region based? I mean, is it OS based? Just try to figure out what that is. And then hopefully that'll kind of help better determine what the issue is. But I know a lot of people, I've been getting a lot of messages like, hey, I got this issue. I can't log in. Like, I ran your code that you provided, but it didn't work. I'm getting this error message. And when I look at that error message, I'm seeing other people getting it. And I have looked into it already, and that error message relates, in this case, the majority of them, about 80% of them, related to multi-factor authentication, and then of course a few other ones related to other reasons. I think one of them related to OS, where it was a Windows bound, like you need to have a Windows OS. I think another one was IP based, which tells me they were probably restricted it to internal like VPN IP addresses only. So unless you're logged into the VPN, you can't access another resources. So again, it just all depends on what the company has set up. So that's kind of some of the main issues that you would probably have related, if you are having issues connecting. Let's see. So those of you who are joining, my drink of choice. This is Drinking with Lou. That's what we're doing here. We're talking tech, but we're also having a drink. My drink of choice today is some tequila. It is Cabo Wabo Tequila Blanco. I like the white the Blanco tequila. I just do, man. Something about it. I enjoy it. That's what I'm drinking. Again, I'll be interested to hear what y'all drinking. What's your drink of choice? Those of you who are drinking already, which tequilas would you recommend? But this is good, dude. I like it. I really do like it. The smell, it smells so good. So good, man. Again, those of you who are joining, coming in, feel free to ask me any question you want related to programming, business, whatever, man. I'd be more than happy to try to answer it best as I can. If you have any code that you will want me to review, by all means, man, let me know. I put my contact information there, and I'm watching my email. So if there is any code that maybe you don't want to put in the chat, but you want to send it to me via email, go ahead and you could do that if you want. I'd be more than happy to review your code. If you have a bug in your code, be more than happy to review it live. We could do it together. So this is the time if you need some help with your code, be more than happy to do it as I stream, help you out. If you have any questions related to just code in general, like, how do I get started? Or maybe you know how to code. How do I get started to freelance? What do you recommend? Any of that stuff, man, by all means, let me know. I'm all ears. Be more than happy to hear. Be more than happy to try to help you out any way that I can. No worm. Nope. There's no worm in this tequila. So you kind of hard to, maybe you could tell, but there's no worm in here. I have never had one with the worm. And I'm assuming they still make it. I don't know if you had to go to Mexico to get those or not, but I'm assuming they still make those. But no, there's no worm, and man, I don't know. I don't know if I want to drink it with the worm. I mean, I guess have you tasted one with the worm? Does it taste better with the worm? I guess, or I guess what do you do in those cases? Just drink it, but don't drink the worm. But no worm on this one. But I gotta say, I like it. It smells real good, man. Real good. So one of the things that I'm gonna share with y'all, this is something I put on my topic list, just kind of discuss with y'all, and I'm gonna share my screen. So those of you who may not know, so I have my own company. It's called Go App It, like Go, then app, A-P-P, then I-T, it. And pretty much, this is my 4th year having that company. I have a small team, nothing big, but I do have a small team. I have one full-time employee, then I have contractors that help out certain projects that I kind of deal with on a reoccurring basis. And everything been going good, man. Every year things have been getting better and better, so very thankful for that. And just allowed me to do other stuff as well. So everything been good. One of the things that we've been doing this year is we've been working. This is our own app. So what we normally do in our business, we do software development. We build web apps and we do integration. And we integrate with different platforms or different, whether it be Shopify, whether it be Wayfair. I mean, the list goes on. We do a lot of integration with different systems and things of that nature. But all of that stuff that we do is normally to support our customers that we have for their business, right? Because they trying to integrate with different systems or whatever. One of the things that I wanted to do this year is build our own SaaS platform. That my company, Go App It, we're going to build an internal platform. And then again, we're going to eventually, it'll be subscription based. And we're doing that for different reasons. It's a different channel of revenue, which in this case is a SaaS platform. Because here's the thing, I can't control the clients that I have. Been very thankful that they've been clients. Some of them been clients for me for 4 years, others been 2 years, and so on. But they could go away one day, man. One day they may be gone because their business slows down or whatever. Who knows? So either way, nevertheless, I feel it's better when we have internal products. Like in this case, this will be a product that we will have that we own, and ultimately, if we're able to get revenue off of it, there'll be another source of revenue, right? To kind of to bring in. So this is what we're building right now. You could tell this is the dev URL. This is the dev server that I have. But ultimately, it's called Go Share It. Again, my company is called Go App It, but this app that we created is called Go Share It. And ultimately, it's a sharing platform. Different, but slightly similar to like a Dropbox, but it's actually different than a Dropbox, right? Or even like OneDrive, Dropbox, Google Drive. They're more designed. They're storage first. Like that's their main goal is to store data, store files, right? That's their main goal, and then you could share some of these files. But a lot of the time, it's you either share it internally, or if you share it externally, it's like a public URL. So that means, in theory, anybody who comes across that URL could download whatever file they're trying to share if it's external. So one of the things I want to do was, build an app that, if I'm a user and let's say I create an account, I have an account, but let's say if I want to share a file with somebody, right? Let's say I want to share a big file, right? I have a file that's 100 megabyte file. Well, most likely you can't really email it. It's too big to email, right? So ultimately, you could use something like Dropbox because that's a good option. But now the other person that's going to receive it, they got to either create a Dropbox account, most likely, in order to be able to receive that. Or there's other ways that you could share it, but you're going to have to make that URL public. And the issue with that is it's public. So in theory, you have bots all over the place trying to find stuff. You could have somebody stumble across it and boom, they're going to download it as well. So with this tool, this app ultimately is I could upload any document I want, any file that I'm trying to share. And then of course I have the ability to make it public or add what's called passcode. Passcode means it generates a 6-digit number code. So in order to be able to even download the file, the end user will need to have the passcode. So that's kind of how you add an extra layer of protection to it, where not just anybody could download the file, but the end user does not need an account. Like they don't need to create an account for this or nothing. Just only the person that's sharing files is going to need to create an account. And so the way I view this platform is kind of different from Dropbox, where Dropbox, in my mind, it's storage first and then sharing second. Where for me, the main goal here is sharing first and then storage second. Now it does store files, as you could tell. These files are stored. They're being stored in AWS, an S3 bucket. That's where they're being stored. But ultimately so the main functionality is you want to share a file, but when you share it, it does store a copy of that file in an S3 bucket, and then ultimately that file becomes available only for a period of time, depending on how long you want to share it, right? If you want to share it, for example, if I go click on the add share, maybe I could set duration where I'm only going to have this file shareable for 1 hour, 1 day, or 7 days, depending on what you pick. If it's 1 hour, then of course you pick a file, then you can make it public or passcode. Again, passcode means the system would generate a six-digit passcode for you automatically, and then it will, in order to download any file, the end user are going to need to have a passcode. Now, if you were to share this with somebody, you just type in their email, right? So let's say I want to share it with contact@iamlou.net. I'm going to share it myself, and let me pick a file. There you go. I picked the file. Then if I hit share file, what it's doing here, it's uploading the file, it's saving the file to an S3 bucket that I've configured, and then after saving the file, it would generate an email. And let me open up the email real quick. it will open up an email. I mean, it will send an email. This is the email, which is send it to, again, my account. I am contact imlu.net, and then there's a download link here. Things are not complete. That's why you got some of these missing images, things like that. Again, we're still working on it, but ultimately there's a download link. So if I click on it, see how, so there's no passcode provided because I made it public. It's a public shared file. Anytime you make it public, that means you really don't care too much that if somebody so for me, if I'm sharing a file and if I don't want nobody else to have it, like I want to make it, I don't want nobody to get it even by accident, I would assign it a passcode. So that means you got to have a passcode to access the file. But nevertheless, you click on download and there you go. It'll provide you, hey, did I make it down? There's no passcode here provided. But what is it? What's the name of the file? Raw thumbnail. Oh, I did make a passcode. There you go. Well, there's the bug that I need to fix. It did not. It should provide a passcode in the email to the end user as well. It didn't. Of course, I just saw it right now. Right. If I open it back up, it should be within here where it's a passcode provided. It's not there. So, but again, we're still testing. I have somebody from my team. We have a laundry list of things that we're checking and testing and so on. So that's what they're doing right now. And of course, as we find stuff, we'll fix it. But the goal would be we should be be able to release the beta version of this app probably in the next 2 weeks. We should go live. So I'll share that with any of y'all. Y'all more than happy to test it, break it, so on, and use it and kind of give me your feedback. Let me know what you think, right? If this app, how easy or how good or how bad it is. I mean, any feedback, man, I'm much appreciative. But either way, nevertheless, you put in your passcode. If you happen to put in, of course, the wrong one, it should give you some sort of error message, passcode incomplete. If you put in the right one, then it'll let you download the file. That's pretty much what it is, right? So that's ultimately what this is, right? As from an end user, whoever receives the email, they don't need to create an email. They don't need to create an account to log in to see the file, access it. All they need to do is click on the download link, and they'll be sent over here. And as long as they have the passcode, they'll be able to access the file, right? If you happen to put the passcode in, and then from the person who has the subscription, they could manage. As you could tell, these files will automatically delete as they expire. So this one has 6 days and 5 hours, 13 days. So on and so on, right? They have X amount of days. This one will expire in 5 hours. Even how the counter here tells you who viewed the file. So like in my case, I viewed the file, but I didn't download. So if I were to refresh this, here raw thumbnail, boom, 2 times. I opened up the link twice, but I did not download any files, so it's 0. So it kind of keeps a counter as well on that. From a counter, this is a good indicator too. If you have something that passcode protected, but you have this counter at 1,000 and this is 0, somebody's tried many times to access that file maybe somebody got the link by accident, or the right person got it, but then they share it with other people for whatever reason, and they're trying to log in, but they don't have the passcode to log in. That would be a good example where this indicator would be very high, but 0 downloads, right? Or very little downloads. But either way, the main goal here, I'm trying to keep it very basic, very simple. The main purpose for this app is share first, store second, right? And I'm working on it, and we're doing testing because we want to be able to share large files. Like this will be very ideal for, especially nowadays where people working remote. You have content creators, working with other like editors and other people that are editing their videos and things of that nature. This will be very ideal for those cases where, like, all right, the content creator would, for example, be using my platform. They could easily send 100 gig file or whatever, right? 50 gig file, whatever the file size is, to their editor, and all they have to do is just click download the file. Then they'll be able to make their edits and so on. And then if they want to share it back, then ultimately they will need an account as well too. But still, again, nevertheless, that's, this will be very ideal for that. Once I do release this and we go live, it is gonna, again, I am gonna charge eventually, but to begin with, I'm not gonna charge. It's gonna be free probably for a few months. And then whoever helps out with the testing and tries that out in beta version, they will probably be locked in to just keep their subscription for free regardless. So once we go live, I'm gonna share that with y'all, and hey man, I mean any feedback I could get would be much appreciative, and because again we're still in beta version, so the idea is we want to break it. We want to break it much as we can. We want to see what we could do to try to break it. So like that, we try to fix it before we actually turn on the subscription model and start charging people to use it. But those of y'all that would help out and do a lot of this testing, y'all would just get rolled in and continue to keep it for free going forward. So that's kind of like the plan behind that. But nevertheless, just wanted to kind of share that. Let's see. What programming language and framework did I use to code that? So the language that I use, and I'll explain to you why I use this language, right? But the language that I'm using for this is Python. I'm using the Django framework. So, I mean, if you're familiar with it, then I don't need to go into details, but I'm using the Django framework, Python. So I believe I'm using Python 3.8. I'm using Django version 3.2, I believe. And the database is a Postgres database that lives in AWS. It's an RDS instance. The server that's running this application, it's on, again, AWS. All of my stuff that I do is AWS. It's a EC2 instance, and then of course all of the storage, all of these files are being stored somewhere, for access. They're being stored in AWS S3 in an S3 bucket. So that's kind of what I'm using. Now the reason why I chose to use Python, so I have worked and built other projects in different languages, right? Like I have used Node.js, JavaScript, of course, with Node.js. I have done some C# development. So I have worked on different languages and different projects. One of the main reasons why I chose Python is the team that I have right now, that is their primary language, right? So it makes it very easier when going forward to have my team that I have now. If we're going to maintain it, they already know that language. It becomes a lot easier. They don't need to learn a new language or learn a new framework. They already familiar with that language, so it makes it a lot easier going forward to do updates. So that's number one. And number two, lately, especially the last couple of months, I've been very focused on Python. Like when I say focus on Python, on creating some of the projects that I do, that I have done in, of course, in YouTube, and all Python related. Now, the reason they're Python related, not because I cannot do some of those in JavaScript or C#, because I can. I just been very focused on trying to push, Python abilities to show, better not push, but to show Python abilities. And even Python today, in my mind, I get it that Python is not as fast as C# or even C++, some of the other language. I get that. But I don't think Python gets enough credit on how fast it is. It's fast when it comes to development, which is number one. But when it comes to actually implementing, like let's say this web app here, most likely what's going to give out first, if something does give out, like any constraints with the system, it's not going to be the programming language. It's not going to be Python. It's going to be the database. That's going to be most likely what's going to happen first. If there is a bottleneck in the process, it's not going to be Python itself. It's going to be the database. And especially nowadays with resources being very cheap, like hardware, CPU, memory, things of that nature. It's way cheaper than what it was 5 years ago, and cheaper than what it was 10 years ago. And things are getting faster. CPUs are getting faster, and RAM becoming a lot. You could expand by, a few hundred, gigs of RAM, and so on. Like all of that becomes it's a lot more affordable. It's very easy to scale from that aspect of it. Like I could easily add more virtual CPUs to it and increase the RAM if I need power, and it won't break the bank either. It's very affordable. But I don't think I need to do that. I have built many projects in Python and Django, and I'm talking about like enterprise projects. Like one of my customers is like I'm not gonna say their name because I don't want to get in trouble with or anything, but they're probably like a $1 billion company, and I build a platform for them that's used to manage sales reps and territory alignments, all kind of other stuff related to sales, and it's being used. There's a lot of stuff going on. They got a handful of people. Like they don't have hundreds of people using it. They have dozens of people using it. And honestly, for their needs and what they do, dude, it runs so smooth. Like no lag. Everything's instant. You know, it just everything works and it works very well. Um, and the reality of it is, most people that are building apps, like any kind of app, man, when you think about it, um, kind of going back to my app, man. Honestly, realistically, I'm not expecting this app to be like the next Dropbox or next Facebook or anything like that, right? Where I'm gonna have hundreds of millions of people tapping into it on a daily basis. I mean, that would be cool, right? If it gets there, but that's not realistic either. Like for me, realistic would be, man, once I go live and start, I'm able to have, I don't know, let's say 5,000 subscribers that subscribe to this platform. Out of the 5,000, maybe 1,000 are paid subscribers, and the other 4,000 are using the free subscription, right? Which it has limited features, but it still has, it allows you to do stuff. That's more realistic, and that's for me. If some app that I build ever becomes like, where it's, I have millions of users, I have 50 million of users, and now everybody's using it, and it's being hit. You know what? If it ever gets to that point, what that for me, the way I see it, what that means is, I'm bringing in revenue, probably millions and millions of dollars a month. And you know what? If that's the case, I could have my team, whoever I have, as my team then, because I'll be able to afford a big team. We could easily upgrade this app and use another language, maybe a faster language like Rust or Golang or something, right? I mean, or those are the two that come to my mind, that if I really need to optimize and still use something more in the modern language, I will probably go with Rust or Golang. But again, that's the way I view it, man. Again, I'm more about like I really don't care when most people build apps, like what language they use, whether it be JavaScript, C#. I get it. Some people are very adamant, like, no, Python should not be used for production. It should only be used for prototyping. But that's bullshit, because there are apps out there. There are people that have built apps out there. A good example would be Google. Man, when Google first launched way back when, they used Python, man, to do their search. That's what they use on the back end. Python will be utilized. Now, Python wouldn't work today. Like, Google will be broken if they had Python. And I get it, because they get billions of requests, per day. But at one point when they started, they used Python, and Python was handling even millions of requests per day with no issue. It just got to the point where, the volume became so big, and of course it makes sense to upgrade. But by then, once you get to that point, you know what that means? That means that, hey, you're probably making millions and hundreds of millions of dollars per year. You got a big team. You could easily have your team help out to upgrade it. Again, use some. You'll be able to afford to pay some top engineers, and then make the migration, the switch from Python to whatever other language you choose to use. That's the way I see it, anyways. But nevertheless, to kind of answer your question, hopefully that answered your question. But yeah, this is just an app that we're about to release, and once we release it, I'll let y'all know, and then y'all want to play around with it, that would be awesome. So let's see. Man, I'm telling you, it smells so good. That's what I love about a tequila, man. No problem, Chris. Do you code in Python or what language do you or do you? Well, I guess what's your language of coding if you do code? Man, I just love that smell. I think next week I may end up trying some bourbon. What was the one? Eagle Rare. I think that's what it's called. Eagle Rare Suburban. I had it once, dude. It's good. It's real good. But it's kind of hard to find the bottle. I need to see if I could find it. I guess that's why it's called Eagle Rare because it's so rare to find. So I want to those of y'all. So I want to talk to y'all. One of the things I want to talk to y'all. Those of y'all who already are programmers today, and you want to be able to move up, right? Move up the corporate ladder, perhaps, or move up, but not corporate. Let's just say you want to move up in your career. Like you're already focused and you already have in your mind, like I want to move up. I want to be able to progress. I'm about a quarter way through App Academy, studying Ruby on Rails and Java. That's cool. So, what are your thoughts on Ruby on Rails? Like for me, Ruby on Rails and Java, those are like two different languages on the way when it comes to the way they operate, right? Like Ruby on Rails, probably more toward the Python side, more towards the JavaScript side, where Java, you know, it's more toward the C# side. So any app or core that you build, just for example, um, the amount of code, the lines of code that you would write in Java would probably be 5 times more, maybe 4 times more than, let's say, a Ruby on Rails project. Even though it's the same project, but the amount of code that you would write would be easily double or triple the amount of code, amount of lines. But again, Java is faster. You know, so just kind of curious on what are your thoughts since you're kind of studying both. Which one do you like best, and what are your thoughts on those two languages so far? Because it seems like you're a quarter way through your boot camp or through your App Academy. So one of the things that I was saying, those of y'all who are trying to, there's a few ways to move up in your careers, right? Those of you who are developers. Well, for one, if you're trying to become a developer, and I'm assuming like you, Chris, you're kind of, starting your App Academy. I'm assuming if you're not a developer, that's part of your goal probably to become one eventually. But that's always a challenge, right? Like step no one is how do you get your foot in the door? And it's tough, man, because I feel like some companies are trying to mimic some of these big companies, right? Like your FANG companies, your Facebook, your Apple, your Google. They're trying to mimic what they do. Now, what they do, their interview process is very intense. It's it's one of those deals where you're going to go through who knows how many, probably 4 iterations of the interview. For example, they're going to have a whiteboard. You're going to have to write code. They want to see how you solve the problem. They do all these craziness, what I call it, right, to figure it out. Now, here's the thing. Because they pay very well and they're so big, they're able to do that. What happens in my mind, and this kind of sucks, you start to have these smaller companies, right? These startups or even these mid-sized companies. They're trying to mimic what they're doing. Like, oh, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to be like extra tough because we want the best of the best. But they're not going to pay you the best of the best price either. Google may pay you, starting salary of $160,000 plus, equity share and plus, bonus and all of that equals to like 250,000. But then you go to have this other company, a smaller company, a startup or a mid-sized company, and they want you to go through all the same loops, the hoops, jump through all these same hoops that Google does, but they're not going to pay you $250,000 starting salary or $250,000 total, right? Total. When I say total, which includes stock, equity, bonus, and salary, they're going to be more like, oh, well, we're going to pay you only, $65,000 salary, and then maybe you get a bonus, and that's it. There is no equity share, and it's like, dude, like, you cannot do that, man. Like, how the hell are you gonna want, like, it's almost like you're trying to find the best of the best, but at the same time, you're not paying for the best of the best. So a lot of the time, there's no need to go through that process. Find somebody that's good, that knows what they're doing in the actual projects that you're working with, and hire them, man. Go with that. That's, what should happen, and especially what happens when you have new developers that are trying to get their foot in the door. They don't have no experience. Maybe they went through a boot camp. Maybe they're self-taught, but they know enough. Like, they have at least the fundamentals down. They know, decent enough. And then, sometimes they struggle to get their foot in because they apply for a junior dev job. But then when you look at the description, it's like, we need 5 years experience, or we need you to have, it's a junior dev job, but we want them to have 5 years experience with JavaScript, and we want them to know DevOps to deploy the application, and we want them to do the X, Y, and Z. Like, what the hell, dude? That's not a damn junior dev job. A junior dev job is more somebody, we want somebody with 6 to a year experience, maybe at most, or somebody that's willing to learn, somebody that understands basics. That's how it should be. Then once they get their foot in the door, they should start learning. Right, they should kind of progress and get the learning or whatever. That's how, in my mind, how it should be, but it's not always the case, man. That kind of sucks, I think, for people that are trying to get their foot in the door. Let's see. I like Ruby because it's very clean, elegant. Include React and Node.js, and like Java and Kotlin because I would like to eventually build Android apps. Yeah, no, for sure. So I know, like, Kotlin is the main language if you're trying to build native Android applications. Just like Apple, their main language is Swift. If you're trying to build native, again, native being using the language. Anytime you build a native app, in your case, if you're building Android, it will be Kotlin, and then for Apple, it would be Swift. Would be when you're trying to make sure that you have access to all the functionality that's available for that mobile device. There are these other frameworks to use. Flutter, right? Flutter is one of them. What's the other one? React has one as well. What is it? React? Damn it! What the hell is it? It's React. I'm trying to think of the name. Is it React Mobile? Is that what it's called? I don't know. I'm trying to think what the hell it's called. Either way, but Flutter is the one that comes to mind, and C# has one as well. Damn it, I can't remember the name. But either way, those frameworks, you build it in a different language, which I saw, like, for Flutter, using the Dart programming language. And what happens is you build it in one language, but you could then deploy it to iOS and Android, to both devices. So that's kind of the benefit of that. Now, the downfall of that is an app like Flutter, even though for, I think, a lot of the core pieces, it works well, there's some functionality that may not be feasible to do depending on what you're doing, where it may require the native language. In your case, if you're building an Android app, it may require Kotlin to program in that language to be able to use those native features that only exist for them. Same thing with iOS, and that's kind of I think one of the challenges with these projects with Flutter. They work good for a lot of projects. A lot of projects, like, they work so smooth, so well, and it's a bonus because you're writing in one language that you could deploy it to both mobile devices, OSs, right? Android and iOS, which is the main ones around. So in a lot of cases, Flutter makes sense. You write it in one language, deploy it to two iOSs. But depending on what you're building, because if you're using some features that maybe doesn't exist in that Flutter framework, then that's where you would have to use, Kotlin or Swift and build those apps natively. Or let's say you're trying to build an app, but your focus is strictly performance. You want this app to be super fast. That's where it makes sense to build it natively, because you do get some better performance building it natively than using a framework like Flutter, where you build it in one language and then you can deploy it to multiple languages. But yeah, you're right. Ruby will be a lot cleaner for sure. And so the thing about Ruby is, Ruby is a programming language, but the only usage that I really hear that people that use Ruby use it for is Ruby on Rails, which is for web development, right? Web apps. And even though Ruby has the power to do all kinds of other stuff, I mean, in theory, it could do statistics, it could do all this other stuff. I mean, it has the ability to do it. It just the community never build towards that. Where Python, I think that's why Python's so popular. The community actually they started building these statistical packages to compete with the R language. And now it kind of, a lot of people that used to use R, they use Python now because it does the same thing and it does it even faster in a lot of cases. And I think that's why Python becomes so popular, because you have these communities, right, that they build these packages for statistics. They build these packages that work for APIs. They build these packages like frameworks like Django and Flask that work for again APIs and web development. Then there's you have these other packages that are for machine learning and all the other stuff. So they have they're like very scattered, right? You could use that language, and there's packages already that are very established, so you could use for machine learning, for web development, for statistics, for data processing, right? Data processing is used a lot. It's very heavy for that. Like even Amazon uses a lot of their services. They're using Python underneath in the engine to do a lot of data extraction and ETL, right? Extract, transfer, and load processes, on their side. It's very good for that. So that's one of the reasons why I think it got as popular. Ruby on Rails, I remember, when was this? Like 7 years ago, maybe? I'm trying to think, 8 years ago. It was like real popular, man. Like everybody was coding in Ruby on Rails. That was like the language at the moment. Everybody was building web apps. I want to say maybe it was 10 years ago, but somewhere around there. It was like everywhere, dude. Every startup company, that's what they use. They're like, oh, we're going to use Ruby on Rails for our project. That was the language that they used, right? And it was that popular, man. It was like the language of choice. All the boot camps that were out, they were all using Ruby, like teaching in Ruby on Rails, because it was just that popular. Over time, it just started kind of declining some. It's still being used. They still have a following. And there are companies, like a lot of these startups, that build their platforms on Ruby on Rails. They need people to support that platform unless they rebuild it. But I know there was, I had a old colleague that I worked with some years back, and we both left that company eventually, went to do different things. Of course, I started my own company, but she ended up becoming a like HR manager, I guess, or whatever, at this other mid-sized company or so. And I remember there were this is before I started my business, so this was maybe like 6 years ago or so. I was trying to apply for it to that company, but they used Ruby on Rails. I wasn't that familiar with Ruby on Rails. They're like, yeah, we need somebody that's real good and so on. I was more Python at the time, so ultimately I didn't get the job or nothing like that. But I remember she was telling me some feedback, and I remember like asking questions. And one of the things so they use Ruby on Rails, and what did they use for the backend for Java? They're using JavaScript as well the front end, but they were using, damn, I can't remember. But either way, at the time they used Ruby on Rails, but they told me we're actually switching. We're making a transit. We're starting to make a transition. This was 6 years ago. Because at that time, Ruby on Rails started slowly. Again, it's still being used a lot. It still has some popularity too, and there's still companies building on it. But it was not like the way it was like 10 years ago, dude. I'm telling you, 10 years ago, it seemed like everybody was using Ruby on Rails. I don't know why. It was just that popular. It was like the popular language at its time. And I think a lot of it has to do because it was easy, man. It was very easy to get started. Very easy to get a web app up and going. And it was just like, boom, you could get a project up and loaded in a matter of days. You know, it was that simple, man, to get started. And I think that's what made it so popular. But I think its downfall was it was strictly focused for web only. And then, of course, you know, at the end of the day, I think the king of web, sorry to say it, but it kind of is probably PHP. Because all the WordPress apps, you know, websites and so on that are being built is all PHP. You got a lot of people building, you know, their websites using that. I'm not a big fan of it, but nothing against PHP. Just, I don't know, man. I just don't really like their language that much. I don't think it's a bad language. I think I think a lot of people give it, give it some crap, but I don't think it's that bad. Let's see. You are right. The Java course I'm working through has a Python section also. It's really flexible. So I'm just kind of curious. The App Academy that you're doing, is that something that you're kind of doing on your own, or is this actually like some sort of boot camp of some sort where you're paying for, I guess? Like, are you paying for that to learn it, I guess? I guess that's what I'm wondering, is it a boot camp or is it just some sort of course that you paid and you kind of learn as you go type deal? I've seen some that are like that. It's kind of more of it's like an app. You just pay for it, but you kind of learn as you go. Whereas the boot camp is a little bit more different. Boot camps have more structure to it, right? You have like and you have some sort of teacher or instructor that are kind of walking through the course and they're teaching you, and you gotta like follow along their program. From what I have seen, Ruby was quick and easy to build with. I think Twitter started with Ruby on Rails, but it had to move on. Okay, gotcha. So it is a boot camp. Yeah, again, and that's a good example, right? Like how you mentioned with Twitter, right? It was, started with Ruby on Rails. So they just assumed that it was started with Ruby on Rails, and that's where I kind of go back to, like, I don't think it really doesn't matter how you get started, man. Like at the end of the day, if you have an idea of a project that you're trying to build, it could be Python, Ruby on Rails, JavaScript, Java, whatever it is, whatever language that you feel comfortable with, and that you feel that you could build that idea from, that's the language to use. Because again, at the end of the day, if you get to the point where maybe that language cannot handle all of the transactions that are happening, in my mind, what that means is you're doing very good. Your app is doing real good. And if your business is doing good, and the company, right, that you launched, your platform is doing that well, there's a good chance that you're bringing in millions and millions of dollars in. And if you're bringing that much money, then you could have a team of engineers figure out, well, now what is the best language to use to ultimately migrate from this language that we're using, because maybe it's not fast enough, because now we're getting millions of requests per second to be able to upgrade it to another language, with more horsepower, right? Like that's one of the reasons why I don't ever, like, I have talked to some people and they're like, well, no, Python should never use Python in production. It cannot handle the workload, which is BS, because it can. I have seen it myself handle the workloads, but nevertheless, I do understand though, even like Python, right? If I were to deploy an app and it's getting 1 million plus requests per second, man, it's probably going to struggle. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I could increase the CPU and I could do some load balancing and things of that nature, and that may help out in the short term. But in the long term, if I'm getting a few million requests per second over time and it keeps increasing, I may need to switch languages. But again, most people that build apps, you're not going to have that issue, man. You're not going to be building the next Twitter, the next Facebook, right? Or I don't even want to say Facebook because they're actually declining. But you know what I mean, right? The next TikTok, whatever app, Dropbox, or whatever app being built, right? That has a lot of transactions, a lot of activity. Most people apps are not going to be that way. So there's no need to think, I want to build my app to be the most optimal app there is so I don't have to worry about it once it scales. Because what happens is they spend all the time and effort doing, trying to design it to that level, and it never gets to that point. They only get 100 subscribers, and that's it. So, like, dude, what's the point of over-engineering something that doesn't require it? Build it quick, test it out, see if the market even likes it, and if they do like it, there's things that you could do to probably optimize your code and speed up the process. And then if it ever grows up, if your app ever goes from bringing in $1,000 a month of revenue to maybe $10 million a month of revenue, you know what? By then you could afford a team, you could have an engineering team, you could easily then start solving some of these performance challenges that you may have. That's the way I see it, anyways. But that's very cool, man. So I mean, I'm going to assume that you're taking the bootcamp courses because you're trying to get into programming. Is that safe to say, Chris, that is your goal? You want to get into programming, and if you do, what kind of got you into it? What got you into wanting to learn how to code? Is that just something that you're doing it from a career standpoint because it pays well and so on, or you're doing it because just you enjoy to code, or like what got you into wanting to go into that field, I guess? You know what? My cup is empty, so I'm gonna give me some more drink. Damn, I'm telling you, the smell is just so good. Well, I would say, man, becoming a developer is one of those careers where once you get your foot in the door, it pays well, man. So if you actually enjoy coding, it's a win-win, right? You could get paid well, and then you're doing something that you enjoy. So I think that's a big win. And then, of course, as you know, I mean, I want to tell you, like, uh, financially, I'm doing very well. I've, building my business up, and that helps a lot, man. It helps a lot to do different things. It's kind of hard to tell, but I'm in my office right now, so I have an office in my home. This is where I actually work from home, but I have an office. I turned in a bedroom to an office, and I have all kinds of gear in here. I probably should make a video one day. Over here on this side to my left, I have actually a switch, a server, um, a CPU that's acting like a server, um, a wireless router, a gateway. I have all kinds of equipment over here. And on this side, I have another desktop that I built. Actually, built not that long ago. I have like 4 monitors. That's my work PC. This PC that I'm on now, I have 3 monitors. Kind of hard to tell, but one, two, three. Camera, mic, speakers on the side, and then of course my desktop over here. And it. I've been lucky to be able to do a lot of the stuff that I do. I enjoy doing all this stuff that I do, and because my job does pay well, it has allowed me to splurge, right? To be able to do a lot of the stuff that I do, buy the equipment that I buy, right? Like, that's just what I'm into, right? So, and again, I enjoy what I do, so it's a win-win. I enjoy what I do, and it pays well, and allows me, give me freedom to do all kinds of stuff. To, you know, one may call it buy my toys, right? Some people spend money on cars and different stuff, and that's fine. I'm the opposite. I spend money on my equipment, on RAM, CPU. I have like what 3 GPUs. I have like what 4 CPUs, 3 power supplies. I don't know. I have all kinds of different equipment, man. I just enjoy that. I have like 4 motherboards and whatever. I enjoy the tech, right? And then of course, it just makes life like I've been broke, man. Like growing up, we grew up poor. My family, we weren't rich, anything. And then once I kind of left and went on my own, um, dude, I had a you know so before, just kind of now that we're kind of switching this topic, I didn't go to college. I didn't get a college degree. I didn't get a CS degree. I didn't do none of that. After high school, I was working, and I worked in a warehouse. I did a warehouse work for some years, and driving forklifts, picking orders or whatever, starting off at $8 an hour, then eventually moving up $10 an hour or whatever. That's where I got started, man. Like very that type of work. Eventually, I got to the point where, like, man, I gotta create some opportunity. Nobody giving me no opportunity for anything. So you know what? I gotta make my own. And I did. I started learning some other things. At the time, started learning how to do some documentation. Um, and I was like, you know what? I want to do some modeling as well, like engineering, diagram modeling, and because I think they could use it. So the kind of now that I talk about this, one of our biggest customers at the time was BlackBerry. Now BlackBerry was king back in the day, back before Apple became king. BlackBerry was king, and where I worked at in the warehouse, we dealt with all the BlackBerry devices, and they were very big, man. Like the company I worked for at the time, that was like their biggest customer. They're making I don't know how many millions a month or whatever, and that's where I'm like, you know what? Let me learn how to do flowcharts and diagrams to kind of show how the process works. And when I did that, I showed it to them in a meeting, and BlackBerry, like their staff, they were like very impressed. Like, oh, we need this. We need this for all of the stuff we're building out. We want this. We need it. And then that forced my company to, I guess, promote me, right, to some degree. They're like, hey, we're going to take you away from the warehouse, and we're going to move you to the office and give you a cubicle to help us design all of these process flows and all that stuff. And once I went into the office, that's where there was this big project of, hey, we're going to build this internal platform that they wanted. And they wanted me to help them out because I knew I documented all of the processes and created flows. So the programming team was going to build all of that, but I was going to help them because I had all the knowledge. So they're like, all right, cool. As I started helping them, their manager, I guess, was very impressed, with me. They're like, hey, we want you to come work for us. And that's how I kind of got my foot in the door with IT. And then ever since then, dude, I've been doing IT. I learned SQL. This was some years back. So then I learned, Python and some C# and JavaScript or whatever. And man, been doing it since then. But by all means, man, I mean, it wasn't an easy road at all. It was tough, but it was all worth it, man. And then now, of course, at least from a financial standpoint, life is way more easier now. I'm in a position where I could pretty much do whatever I want to do. So it worked out well. Let's see. You were a data engineer at first. So I wasn't a data engineer. Here's the thing. I was no engineer at all. When I first before I even got my foot into IT, I worked in the warehouse. What I was doing some engineering data model, like data flows of like data, diagrams of processes, like flow charts and things of that nature. Normally, some of that stuff, it's things that maybe, I guess, engineers would, not data engineers, but more like I don't know, I'm trying to think of the proper name, but like engineers would do. They will create diagrams of, like, let's say if you create some kind of conveyor belt, and then you got product coming in and product going out. You may have engineers that help design all of that. They will have data. They will have these models, right, where it kind of shows how everything flows in, the timing. Things will come from here to here. It will take this amount of time, and then things will flow out and where it goes and how long everything takes or whatever. So normally those are, I'm trying to think of the proper name. I don't know what the proper name is, but normally engineers will do some of that kind of work. Well, I was doing some of that, but I kind of learned on my own. Well, I don't want to say I learned on my own. There was this guy, he was a manager. He was always like real nice to me, man. He's the one that actually kind of helped me out, like gave me guidance on how to build some of these diagrams and how to, document some of it and all that stuff. So because of his input and his help, I started doing it on the side. Again, I didn't get paid for it, man. I was like still had my normal job, which was out in the warehouse. But when I had spare time or after hours, I would, whatever I learned and took from him, I would like designing, like, oh, you know what? Based on what we're doing, here's a diagram of how everything flows. This is how long this takes to do, and so on. I was starting to learn and started diagramming all of that. And then one of the day, the diagrams that I put together, we had a meeting with the client, which was BlackBerry, and I brought it up like, hey, I got this flow. I was just kind of interested. I want to see, and just kind of put it out there. And they put it up on the overhead, and they were like very impressed. And they're like, we want this. We want this for all of our processes. And they pretty much, it's kind of like forced my company to promote me to say, all right, well, move them to the office and, have them start doing that for all of our processes that we have. And that's kind of how I got my foot in the door, right? It's one of those deals where nobody asked me to do it. I kind of did it, and it just happened to be the client, not my company that I worked for, but the client was very impressed by it, and they kind of almost forced my company that I work for to, not my company, but the company I work for, to promote me and move me to the office. Then from there, I started helping the IT department, and they were impressed. And and then of course that's where I kind of got brought into IT, and pretty much have been in IT ever since. And this was about 10 years ago when this happened. So for the last 10 years, I've been doing some sort of form of IT, right? Whether it be databasing or programming, or system. I think in the beginning it was more like system analyst type work, then eventually with database and, database admin, then of course programming, and then now have my own business, and, that's kind of what I do. So, hey, I mean, sometimes you got to make your own opportunities, man. I mean, it's kind of what you got to do. At least I get it. It doesn't always work, but when it does work, it's, pays off. So, let's see. But that's pretty cool, man. I mean, so hopefully, again, one of the things I would strongly recommend once you do finish your boot camp is, honestly, I would probably start sooner than before you finish your boot camp. Is start getting familiar with the whole interview process. And again, the interview process, man, it's kind of a joke, man. I'm not a fan of it, but it is what it is. One of those games that you just kind of have to play. And it sucks, though, man, but you just kind of have to in order to get your foot in, in the door. And you have to get familiar with the whole interview process. Like, all right, what kind of questions are they going to ask? A lot of these guys ask the same questions over and over again. So based on that, if you, again, memorize what the question is going to be, you could study for it. You could kind of get prepared and get familiar on knowing how to write on a whiteboard, how to write out your code, right? things of that nature. So it's one of those deals that I will strongly recommend. Like, which I'm trying to think. There's somebody. What are their website? Elgato, not Elgato. What the hell? Oh man, I'm trying to think of his name. I follow him on LinkedIn. He used to this guy that I follow on LinkedIn. He used to work for Google, and I think he worked for Facebook, I believe, for a bit, and then ultimately started his own company. Um, and what he does, he created this like a service, I guess. They kind of help you get prepared for interviewing code. Like they have a list of all these different questions they be asked. They would ask you. They kind of help you with the testing. They kind of give you like some insights of what you expect. Um, what kind of test you expect, what kind of question to expect. He has a platform as well that helps out for all of that. I'm trying to think of the name of the company that he has, but I have heard a lot of good things from people that have took it. Um, you got to pay for it, but again, I've heard a lot of good things of people taking it, and that has actually helped them out with their interviewing, and then of course they get the job. Right? That's at the end of the day, it's the whole interviewing good, passing the whiteboard, doing all those things right, just to get your foot in the door, man. I hate that the whole whiteboard experience, man. I'm just not a fan of it because some people get nervous, man, when they're coding in front of, especially when you go do a whiteboard interview, and then you have a room full of, I think that's it, man. I think it is it. That's what I'm trying to. Let me check. Um, that may be him. Yes, that is it. Yep, that's him. So I have heard a lot of good things about it, about his service, right? His platform to help out with all of that stuff. So it's something that, but I would strongly recommend, even if you don't do his platform that he has, um, strongly recommend to at least look up some YouTube videos and kind of go through it because man, people that I have heard, that I have talked to and conversate with, they all tell me the same thing. They're like, dude, I just went thinking that because I know how to program, let's say in JavaScript or whatever, that I should be fine. But then they go to the interview process and then, like they get this very random ass whiteboard question to go solve. They're like, dude, they just freak out. They get stuck, and then of course, then they tell me like they took something like the Elgato expert. I'm not even I'm not trying to I'm not a spokesman or nothing like that, but but he mentioned once he took something like that, like I don't think it was Elgato expert. I think it was something else though that he did, where he kind of like tells you up front, like, hey, these are a lot of the questions that you may expect. Like practice on it, get familiar with it, so you kind of at least be prepared. And then when he did another interview after that, they do like way different. Like one of the questions that they asked him to whiteboard was one of the questions that he studied for already. So he felt confident. He was able to just kind of whiteboard it out with no problem. And boom, next thing you know it, he got an offer for that job. So it sucks that a lot of the whiteboard questions, it's a joke in my mind, but again, it's one of those things though, man, that you just kind of have to do, right? You got to play the game. So in order to win, I would strongly recommend to at least get familiar with some of the questions that they're going to ask and prepare, and just get a sheet of paper and just kind of write it out to kind of get a feel of how it's going to be. Because again, you're not going to have a computer to autocomplete or none of that stuff either. You're not going to have Google to, if you get stuck, to search on how to do something. You're going to have to do it all on the fly with none of that. So let's see. My problem is that I can't focus. I like making websites, making games, making apps. Like machine learning, I had to drill down and specialize first. So yeah, I'm gonna say what you labeled right now, you're like very scattered. Like websites, games are way different. Like way different. Then of course, what you mentioned, apps. Well, apps depends on what kind of app you're building, right? But if it's a mobile app, that's way different in gaming and different in websites as well. And then of course, machine learning. That's a whole different category. So yeah, that's. I mean, it's nothing wrong to get familiar with these other technologies, right? These other frameworks and these other platforms and so on. Like, but I would recommend for sure, man. Like, um, pick something that you feel. If you feel pretty good about all of those four items that you mentioned, then what I would recommend is like, all right, where are you trying to get into? Like the gaming industry is a beast. I would tell you that right now. That's people that I have talked to and people that I have just kind of heard talk about the gaming industry. It's no joke, man. It's hard to get into, which is number one. Number two, depends on who you work for, man. Some of these companies will work you to the bone. Like they're expecting you to work 80-hour days, especially if you have a launch that you're about to launch a game and all this stuff, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but a lot of these big companies, man, they treat their employees like crap. So it's like you're gonna release a new game, so you got 100 developers working on that game nonstop, 50 hours a day, 70 hours a day, 80 hours, not a day, a week. Everybody put in a lot of hours. Everybody's excited because it's like boom. Then what happens? The game launches. As soon as the game launches, those 100 developers they have, they probably release 80 of them. 80 are gone. Well, they're just gone, and they keep maybe 20 or whatever. Like it sucks, but that does happen. I'm not saying that if you start working for a company, that's what's going to happen, but that is what I have heard that happens in some, especially for big companies, the big releases. So it's just be aware of that. Websites, you can make money on websites. It just depends if you like doing it or not, right? And by websites, I'm assuming you mean WordPress. I mean, if you know WordPress very well, by all means, you can knock out websites very quick. I'm not a front end guy. I like more back end stuff like APIs, automation, database. Uh, I do front end, of course, just like the way I showed my app earlier that I have. So I mean, I'm able to do it. I could do it. Just not a fan of the front end. I'm more the fan of the back end type stuff. And honestly, I don't know why this is, but it is the case in a way. Though at least it has been the case for some years. I think it may be changing a little bit, but from a money compensation standpoint, back end always seems to make more money than front end. It just does, right? Unless you're a full stack and you're doing back end and front end. But if you're from a financial standpoint, if you're doing front end compared to back end, you're gonna make more money on the back end. And then of course apps. Apps could be anything, but I'm assuming you're probably talking about mobile apps in that case. You know, there's that would just be a matter of getting familiar with the language that you're going to be building, right? I know you mentioned earlier about building Android apps. So if you're going to go down that path, getting familiar with APIs, because normally when you build a mobile app, that's how you get your data. You're connecting to an API to be able to pull your data, to be able to authenticate and do all that stuff. That's how a lot of mobile applications are built. You build the main functionality on the app, but when it comes to community pulling data, all of that, it's through an API. Where when you build like a web app, being specific web app, using a framework like Django, or let's say you're using Node.js, and you're using I'm trying to think of what's one of the backends. But what is it for JavaScript? Handrails or something? I can't remember. You don't need an API. I mean, you're communicating strictly with the server, and then you pull data back and forwards. But there's no API that's needed in those cases. But yeah, man, just pick something that you feel or whatever seems to whatever you like. If you like all of them evenly, then just kind of weigh the pros and cons of each one. Try to figure out where to try to specialize that. Cause that's your best, at least for now, man. I mean, once you get your foot in the door, so that's one of the other things I want to talk about. One of my topics for it's always tough to get your foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, it seems to be a lot easier to go to another company. It just works. That's how it is, man. Get your foot in the door. Once you get your foot in the door, it becomes a lot easier to go and move and switch companies. So that's kind of one of the other topics on how do you move up in your career. And the reality of it is that's going to be your best option. Get your foot in the door. So let's say you get your foot in the door and you're working for a company, and because you're new, no experience, they're like, we'll pay you $40,000. Okay. You take your $40,000, you work there for about a year and a half. And then what happens if you're trying to move up, then you move to another company. Find another company, apply. And this time, you're not a newbie no more, right? You have a year and a half of experience under your belt. But you're going to make things a lot easier to get hired. So now, you could go to another company, apply, and you're not a junior developer no more. You're just going to be just a developer, a web developer, or whatever, just developer, period. And they're probably going to offer you more. They're going to be like, okay, you got experience. We'll give you $60,000 or $70,000. It depends on where you live, right? Price varies. And now you're, from a year and a half, you're going from $40,000 to $65,000, $70,000 easily. And then from there, you work another year and a half or so, 2 years or something. And then you could apply for another company. And then now the other company will be like, all right, we'll give you $100K to come with us. Because you have 4 years of experience and you're very, knowledgeable in whatever stack you're using and so on. So that is your best bet. I know for some people, they're like, well, you're not being loyal to coming, dude, screw that. Again, it's different now, man. It's not like the way it used to be before. And the reality of it is, because I have seen it, this has happened to me. I stayed for a company and I bust my ass off, and I'm thinking because I'm busting my ass off and I'm doing all the right things, and then even whenever we do our annual evaluations, they're like, man, you did awesome work. Your work was awesome. Work was good. But we could only give you a 2.5 or 3% raise, or they may be like, we're going to give you the highest raise we could give you, which is 5%. And then they make you feel like, hey, that's better than everybody else. Everybody else only getting 2%. But it's like, okay, so you give me 5%, but I'm only making $50,000. Dude, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's like what, $2,500 raise or whatever. It's not much. Hey, what up? So what's going on? So this is what's going on. It's Drinking with Lou, and here's my drink. I'm drinking some tequila, and my drink of choice is Cabo Wabo. So that's my drink of choice. I've been into tequilas lately. It's good. I'm telling you, it smells real good. So I would strongly recommend that drink for sure. But that's what we're doing. We're drinking. We're talking tech. Whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk anything related to coding, Python, program, whatever, right? By all means, let me know. Be more than happy to kind of discuss, with you. And whatever I can do to help you out, man. I mean, that's what we're doing here. I'm drinking. It's called Drinking with Lou, and we're talking tech. Anything tech related. So that's what we're doing. Looking at some of the chats. So what do you code during the day? So my main programming language is Python. So that's my main programming language. I do code in JavaScript because I do front end work as well, and I use some frameworks like Vue.js, and I use AWS for a lot of my services. So, AWS I've been using for some years now. And so I have my own business. My company is called Go App It. And we do, I have a small team, nothing big, but I do have a small team. I have one full-time employee and I have 2 contractors. that work for me. So we do web development for different clients. We build the apps. We manage their apps for them. So they pay me every month to manage it. And then of course I do a lot of integration for my clients. Clients maybe that wanna they have a system, right? Their warehouse system or ERP system, but they want their system to communicate with Shopify or with Amazon or Wayfair or Walmart or whatever, right? All these other companies, they want to communicate with their system. Well, I build the connections that manages those communications back and forwards. And then I charge them every month to manage it for them and to use my service and so on. So that's kind of what we do. Let's see. So that's my profession. Wait, you're a programmer and you want to make 50,000? No, I don't make 50,000. That was an example that I was saying about 50,000 that was related to when you're new. So those of you who just joined in, we're talking about how do you grow. Those of you who are programmers, how do you grow in your career? And a lot of the time when you're brand new with no experience and you're trying to get your foot in the door, you're probably going to get paid less, right? You're going to get paid, let's say 40,000 or 50,000 or whatever a year because you're new. Eventually though, in order to really grow, the reality of it is once you get about a year and a half under your belt, you're going to have to move, like apply it to another company. And what's going to happen is that other company is probably going to offer you $70,000 to move to go from them. So you're going from 40 or 50,000 a year to let's say 70,000 because now you got experience. You're not new no more. Because you have experience, they're willing to pay you more. And then once you move to the other company, let's say making $70,000 a year, and you're there for a year or two, for example, you're able to now apply to another company. And then at the end of the day, after let's say 7 years of doing that, you'll start making six figures. You'll be making your $150,000, $200,000 a year potentially, right? If you're a good programmer, if you like what you're doing, and all of that stuff. That's really the best way to really move up in your career. The chances of you starting off with a company, right? Let's say they pay you 40,000 because you have no experience. The chances that 5 years later, if you're still working for that company, that you're going to be making 150,000 are very, very slim. Only way that's going to happen if it's a startup company and they grow and become very successful. Then you have a lot of opportunity to move up very quickly. But besides that, it's going to be very tough, man. Because the reality of it is when you work for a company, and let's say a mid-sized company or something, and they pay you 40,000 because you have no experience, well, all they're going to do is give you like a 3, 4, 5% raise every year. That's all they're going to do. So if you do that for 5 years, you're not going to be making $100,000 in 5 years. You're probably making $60,000 in 5 years or something like that. So that's why it's easier to grow faster if you switch. If you, after getting a year experience or a year and a half, go to another company, apply. And you know what? That other company is probably going to hire you because now you have experience. And on top of that, when they do hire you, they're going to pay you even more. And then from there, once you're in that company for, let's say, a year or two, you can apply for another company after that. And now that third company is going to be like, damn, you got 3 years of good, solid experience, and they will pay you more. That, sad to say, but that's the reality of it, bro. If you're really trying to move up, that's your best way to really move up, man. It really is. Let's see. Do you build your own data pipelines? If yes, where do you learn that? So for pipelines development, data pipelines, there's tools that you can use in AWS. When it comes to how do you learn it, I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I think I picked it up just from a little bit of here, a little bit of there. I never took a course, so I didn't learn from one specific source. I think it was just a mixture of YouTube, maybe when I follow some content creators as they talk about the subject, reading on that subject. Then of course working on projects where maybe I got a new client and we need to do some data pipelines. We need to build some out. And then that's where I was kind of forced to kind of learn even more. So it was just kind of very scattered. There was no one source of me learning that. So so you mentioned my website. So my website needs a lot of work, and that's more on my side, man. When we first got started and we first kind of I had to redo my website. I rebuilt it. I created a new logo. I did some redesigning on my website, and then I hired a company to kind of help out. That company did okay, but they slacked in certain areas. And then, so I got, my team ended up building out what we can. We got so busy, man. For when COVID happened, we actually, for me, my business actually grew a lot. We got real busy. I know for some it was the opposite, but it was actually very good for me. So we had a lot of business, a lot of stuff that we were working on, like refinishing the redevelopment of my website, got put on hold. So we are gonna go back and wrap that up, and it's a big mess, man. I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but sadly to say, I just got too busy on actual paying customers on their projects, where I had to put my own internal projects on hold to the side. But we will be redoing that and hopefully get that done soon. Um, I have never made that low as a programmer, but I agree you have to move to make money. And you're right. Like depending on which company you're working for, right? Like at least what I have heard, I never worked for Google, but based on what I have heard, and even some people that I've talked to that have worked for Google, like entry level, their starting overall compensation is like what 200 and something $1,000, because they may get $160,000 starting salary, then they get 30K of stock equity of the company, and then of course they may get like I don't know 15 or $30,000 bonus or something like that, right? Which ultimately ends up being over $200,000. Now that's a big company, right? Like Google. Well, if you live in the Midwest, let's say you live in, let's just pick Midwest for example. You're not gonna have these big companies there, right? You're not gonna have your Apples and your Googles, your Facebooks. You're gonna have other companies, smaller companies, right? Maybe a company that has 200 employees, for example, that they need some programmers to build some internal applications or things of that nature. Like maybe they're not building tools, they're not building apps that they're selling that everybody uses. They may be building internal applications, so they need to hire programmers to do all of that. Those are the ones, honestly, that you're not going to get that $250,000 type compensation. You're just not. If you're a senior or just a normal web developer, you may get 100,000, 120,000, 150,000, perhaps around there. If you happen to be a junior type developer, then they're gonna lowball you big time. They are, man, and it sucks. But the reality, that's what's gonna happen. They're gonna pay you $40,000, $50,000, because they're not a multi-billion-dollar company or nothing. They're probably a company that may be making $40 million a year, right? And then, but on top of that, they have who knows 50 employees or whatever, and you're just not gonna get paid in those kind of. It all depends on where you live, right? New York, California, you're gonna get paid a lot more. If you live in a big city, you're gonna get paid a lot more. If you're coming from a small city, son, there's companies that need programmers in those smaller towns, smaller cities. You're not gonna get paid that much though. You're not gonna get paid that six-figure salary. Especially if you're a newbie, you're just getting started. So I'm with you. Like, I'm from Texas, right? So cost of living is cheaper than other places. But me as a programmer, when I was working for somebody else, I was making six figures. I wasn't making. When I say six figures, it's very vague, right? Like, well, what is six figures? Is it 100,000 or the 900,000? Well, it wasn't at the high end of six figures, of course, but it was, within that 120, 130K mark or whatever, which this would have been, some years back, because I've been working for myself for about 4 years now. So that's based on cost of living, all of that aspect. It's not bad. It's really not bad. But again, I mean, California making 130,000, that's probably not a lot. You will need to be making for sure more like 300,000 or so and based on the cost of living and all those aspects of it, right? At the end of the day. So what are y'all program language? What are y'all program in? Just kind of curious. Your language, your language of choice. Put it that way, because some of y'all probably program in multiple languages. But what are your languages of choice? Damn, I'm telling you, man, I can't stop smelling it. It smells so good. So those of y'all who are planning, let's say if you're programming, you work for somebody, and you want to work for yourself, right? You're planning to stop working for your company that you work for and freelance or start your own company or whatever. I just say freelance for now, right? That's how a lot of people get started. You want to freelance, because you're going to build an app for this client and then move on to another client and so on. One of the things that I will say to expect is whenever you meet with a client, most clients, like this is my experience in a ways, are not tech savvy. So they're just thinking like, oh, I want an app where I could enter in data, and then I could when I hit submit, an email gets sent out to this group or whatever. Like their mind, that's all they're thinking about that. Like that's all I'm looking for. That's all I want. So anybody that has experience in that would be like, oh, that's not too bad. I mean, we could easily build an app that has a form, right? It'll be like a crude application. You enter in data, you hit submit, and then it'll just save it to the database and send an email. Pretty straightforward. Like there's nothing really complex about that. So it sounds straightforward. And what happens is that's all they tell you at the time. So then you put a quote together. You give them the quote for that service, and then you start the project. And then what happens, and this has happened many times, dude, many times. But what happens is once you start the project, the requirements get all out of whack. It does. Like it has happened to me where let's say I meet with the owner, right? And they're like, hey, I want you to build X, Y, and Z. I'm like, okay, I give him a quote and he approves it. Like, yeah, I approve it. Like, okay. Then I'll start the work. So rule number one, when if you're going to do that kind of work, get money up front. You don't have to collect 100% of the money up front, and some clients will not want that either. But I would try to collect 50% up front if you can. Try as much as possible, get 50% up front. And then on top of that, if you can't get 50% up front, get at least 1/3 at the minimum, man. You should not be getting no less than that, man. You should not do the job if they don't want to give you nothing up front. So get some money up front, man. So that's number one. Number two, so what happened in my experience when I was talking to the owner, he gave me his requirements, very vague. I had to kind of pull teeth to kind of get some more info. But ultimately, based on what I was able to get, it seemed like, all right, this is a basic crude application. Nothing fancy about it, right? It is gonna have a login, so we need a ability to log into the app. No problem there. Then of course just have a form, submit the email. Straightforward, no issues. Then what happens is we start the project. I show him the first iteration of the project, but when I show it to him, he had other parties involved. He had some other colleagues and other people, people that actually want to use the app, use the application. They were involved in the meeting. So now after I show him, hey, well, we need this and we need this. They had all this input. So that initial request that he had, it's that went out the window, dude. The requirements got way more intense. It was we want to be able to fill out the form, but we want to be able to have where we're not entering customer information every time. We just want to be able to select it, and then it populates all of their information. So that required creating another module to store customer information. And then they were like, well, we want to be able to, as well as we submit, we save the form. Like, we want to be able to send a text message out to this person about the form when it's this kind of customer. And I mean, it just got way more, the requirements got way more intense, right? And when I first started initially, I was like, okay, well, let me see what I could do and let me change it or whatever. I didn't charge them, man. That's my mistake, because what I should have done, and that's what I do today, and I make it known to the client, like, hey, the quote that I'm giving you is based on the requirements that we talked about right now. If things change, that means the quote is going to change, and I could re-quote you if needed, but it's going to change, and I had to do that. All right, Chris, man, I appreciate it, man. And so I gotta let the customer know, like, hey, if things change, the quote is gonna change, and that's what you need to know. But I didn't. My mistake was I did not do that initially, because at first I was thinking like, all right, well, let me see if I can try to squeeze it in. Maybe it's not too bad. Well, the extra development needed, like, dude, it was a lot more intense, a lot more work. There's all kinds of other stuff I needed to do, like, damn, like, I'm pretty much doing it for free, man, at the end of the day, and that sucked. That's when I first got started. And again, when I first got started, I didn't have a lot of customers, right? So I wasn't making a lot of money yet. I just got started. So that's like the worst feeling too. Like, you're just getting started. It's not like you have all these other customers that are bringing a lot of money. You just have maybe one or two, and then now you did not quote this project properly, and I don't know. It's a big mess, man. But I was starting to recommend, if you go in and become a freelancer of some sort, right? Try to make sure when you meet with the client, like, you're meeting with the owner, right? Because remember, the owner is not always the one doing the work. They don't know all the details. Always ask, who's going to be using the application? Like, can we get them involved as well to make sure that we get all the requirements that we need? So you can pick their brain, get their input, their feedback, right? You want to do all of that. And then that'll give you a better estimate of how to quote it properly, which is number one. Then number two, after you do quote it, there's going to be new stuff coming. And you need to make sure to let them know, hey, any change requirements that come through is gonna cost more money. So the quote that I'm giving you based on what we talked about, but if you want me to add new features, I'm going to have to quote you for that, and that was an extra cost. Make it aware to them. So at least now they're just not like, oh yeah, let's add all these other features, and then of course, they're thinking it's for free, like you're not charging them. No, you're letting them know that, that's what's going to happen. So you get paid for it, you get compensated, right, for the work that you're doing. And it is going to happen. Every project that I have built for my client, whatever I initially build, what happens is there's always extra requirements that come. Always. I don't think I have built one project where I built it and there wasn't extra requirements. But that's fine, because for me, the way I do it now is because I let them know that there's an extra cost. If they throw in these extra requirements, I charge them for it. Let's say they want me to build an app. I'm like, all right, I'll build that app. It's going to be $25,000. But I let them know, if you want these other features, other functionality, it's going to cost more. And then normally what happens is there is extra feature, there is extra functionality that they want. So then I quote them for that piece. All right, well, it's $25,000 for this, then it's another $5,000 for this, or $1,200 for this, depending on what it is, right? Or $10,000 for this or whatever. And sometimes they may say like, oh man, that's a little bit pricey. So nah, that's fine, we don't need it. Other times they're like, hey, we really need it, so here, let's, I'll pay for it, type deal. So again, man, that's something you got to be aware of, man. I made some mistakes in the beginning for that. Now the good thing about it, though, the mistakes that I made with one of my clients, because I undercharged them, I did not quote them properly. After we finished the project, they wanted all these extra features. They wanted some like many other modules and features added on. Dude, I charged the crap out of those features. I mean, there were features that, and honestly, are probably just being honest, probably would have charged like $2,500 for one feature, maybe 3,000 for another feature, and there was a few features that I added. So I probably would have charged more within that range for some of these features because it really wasn't too complex or too hard to add. But because I knew that, dude, I lost money on that project. I need to find ways to make up for it. I'm like, all right, you want that feature? It's gonna be $7,000 for that feature. You want this other feature? It's gonna be $10,000 for this feature. Like I quoted and then of course at that point, because you already built your main application. Again, I wasn't trying to rip them off. That's not the point. This was a customer that had. You got to understand who you're dealing with too, man. You got to keep that in mind. If you're dealing with a customer like a mom and pop customer, you cannot give them a quote for $100,000 and expect them to be like, oh yeah, we'll get it. It's not going to happen. Just putting that out there, man. You got to be aware of it. If you're dealing with a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar company and they're going to do business with you, they have the pockets. They have the budgets. A lot of the customers, like a lot of the vendors that they deal with, because I've seen it firsthand, a lot of the vendors that they deal with that will do some kind of work like that you're probably going to do, they charge them $50,000, $100,000, whatever. Like they're charging them a good amount of money. They're not charging them pennies. They're not. So keep in mind, I mean, that's where your pricing does change. Like if I'm going to do build a web app for, let's say, a small customer that maybe only has $2 million worth of revenue. And out of the $2 million, they're probably only netting $800,000 a year. Let's just say that, right? After they pay themselves and pay their small staff that they have and, overhead or whatever, they may have, let's say they have $700,000 left, right, that they're netting from the $2 million that they make. That kind of client, if you were to build an app for them, you would have to quote it in a way where, like, it's not gonna have all the bells and whistles, but you're gonna have enough the functionality for them to use it, and you're gonna have to charge them a reasonable price. Maybe that would be an app where it's kind of like a slimmed down version of some other app that you may build, and maybe you charge them $20,000, $25,000. Where you build another app for a multi-million-dollar company, that probably makes $500 million a year or whatever, and they have deeper pockets, but you're going to add all these extra bells and whistles as well. You wouldn't charge them $25,000. You would charge them $200,000, let's say, for that app, or $150,000 or something like that, because they could afford it, for one, and you're going to give them some extra functionality as well, some extra features. And that's normally how it's done, man. So keep in mind, you're not always going to charge, like, for doing the same thing. You build the same app for this client and this client. Depending on the size of the customer, it does change how you quote them. And just keep that in mind, man. Because if you charge this smaller client $10,000 to build an app, and then this bigger client, you charge them $10,000, dude, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. You need to really evaluate, the type of company that you're dealing with, right? So just kind of keep that in mind. What else, guys? So I didn't get any questions this time around about any code reviews or any of that, but that's kind of what we're gonna do here too as well. It's more focus on Python, again, Python related. So those of y'all who do have any Python code that you need some help with, you want me to review, maybe you're trying to solve a problem with Python that you're stuck with, I'm gonna be live streaming every Friday from 9 p.m. Central to 11 p.m. It's actually 11:15, but normally that's the schedule. May go over past 11 sometimes, but the schedule is 9 to 11 p.m. Central. That's what we're going to be doing. Talking tech. If you have code reviews, we'll review code. If my contact information, if you do want me to review anything that you have, you could email it to me at contact@iamlou.net. That's the email address to send it to. be more than happy to do a live, right? Review your code live, try to solve any issue that you may have as we stream. And then, of course, if there is nothing to review code-wise, then we're just going to talk. We're going to drink, which is what we're doing, and just kind of talk tech. Talk whatever it is that you want to talk about, man. You can talk about boot camps, programming, boot camps. Are they worth it? Are they not? Salaries depend on where you live as a programmer. California, of course, is going to be higher. New York is going to be higher. If you're a programmer in Kansas, it's not going to be the same as in California. If you're a programmer in Oklahoma, again, same thing. It's not going to be the same thing as in California, or like in some of these other places that are growing, like Austin. Austin has been growing a lot. What do we have in Austin? We have Apple down in Austin. There's a lot of companies moving down there. So I live in Texas. I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we have a lot of business over here, man. I think from a programming standpoint around this area, I get a lot of recruiters hitting me up all the time about, job opportunities. And again, I have my own business, so there's no need for me to pursue that. But based on the job opportunity that they want me to apply for, I guess, or to interview for, it's been within the range of $120,000 to $160,000 for those jobs. So that's kind of what I've been seeing around my area. Let's say if you're a very solid, good programmer, you should easily be able to get $120,000 to $140,000 in my mind. If you're a senior type programmer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you get $150,000 to probably $200,000, I would say max. That's kind of the range around this area. Now, if you're what you want to call a junior developer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, dude, I see it's like very all over the place, man. I've seen it where it's like $40,000, $50,000. I want to say more $50,000. Seen it where it's like $50,000 that they're willing to pay if you're a junior, up to probably around $70,000. It kind of fluctuates within that range. It just depends, man. There's some companies that they know what they're doing, dude. They're trying to take advantage of people, and they're like, you know what? Because you're a junior, you have no experience, none of that. Even though you probably have proven or showed to the interview process that you know what you're doing and you know how to do it well, but because you don't have no experience, they intentionally gonna like try to take advantage of you. They'll be like, we're gonna only pay you $40,000. That's what they do. And here's the thing, though. Sometimes you got to take what you could get, man. Sometimes it's hard to get your foot in the door. So if that helps you out to get your foot in the door, get the experience, do it. Get paid $40,000. Get your foot in the door. Work your 1 year. I would say 1 year at the most. After 1 year, start applying. Because I would tell you right now, as you apply for another job, now you're not you don't have zero experience no more. You have experience. You can put down on paper. Yep, I have 1 year experience. Hell yeah, I know what I'm doing. And you know what? You have a better chance now of somebody hiring you, and they're going to pay you more. And then eventually, over time, you just kind of repeat the process. And next thing you know it, as long as you keep growing, right? Keep growing and, expanding your knowledge, then yeah, next thing you know it, you'll be making your 6 figures a year. At least in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right? Other areas I can't really speak of, like Kansas or Wisconsin or whatever. I don't know, man. I cannot tell you. I have no idea what programmers make in those areas. I'm not sure. Damn, I love the smell. It smells so damn good, dude. I gotta say, I do like this tequila, man. I'm gonna try to find this bottle for next week when I do my live stream called Eagle Rare. It's a bourbon. And I had it once, and it was good, dude. It was real good. So I'm going to try to see if I can find it. It's not that expensive either, man, for being that good. I think it's like $38. It's like, if you could find it for the actual price. But, man, I think, so the liquor store that I go to, it's actually the big liquor store. They have all kinds of different, like high-end bottles as well. Well, they have it there. But, dude, they have it for $80. And that's crazy, man, because it doesn't cost $80. but it's so hard to find, dude. That's what makes it so tough. Like, you cannot find that bourbon. It's not it's not like Jack where you can find in every liquor store and there's plenty of it. Like, dude, very few liquor stores carry it for one, and the ones that do have it, a lot of time they get sold out because there's just not that much supply for it. But that's not regular price either. If you buy it directly from the distributor or whoever's selling it, it's $38. That's original price. That's how much they sell for. But man, they just jacked up the price. Kind of sucks. I'm gonna just try to see how I can at least try to order it, and then maybe I could get that for next week and try that. That will be my drink of choice next week. But dude, this tequila is good. So good. So those of y'all who are watching me on Twitch, so I stream on Twitch as well. Not this kind of stuff, but I also stream. So I'm actually streaming right now on both YouTube and Twitch. So I'm kind of streaming on both platforms. I do game, and when I game, I stream on Twitch only, which right now I'm gaming on Halo. So I may end up doing that later. And what time is it my time? It's already 11:21 p.m. my time. So I'm probably going to end up logging off in a few, stop streaming in a few. Just staying on a little bit more longer than what I planned. So if anybody has a few questions, try to answer anything. But I'll probably be back on probably around 12:30 or to 1 later on tonight. And I'll be streaming on Twitch only, but I'll be streaming Halo. I'm going to be gaming on Halo. Dude, I've been playing Halo, and man, I love it, dude. I played Halo back, me and buddies of mine, we used to play Halo 2 back in the day on Xbox. Damn, I'm starting to lose my voice. I've been talking a lot the last 2 hours. My throat getting raspy, and I don't think I have any water on me either. But either way, dude, we used to play Halo back in the day, and I remember a buddy of mine and his brother, they actually ended up buying 2 Xboxes in order to connect them together. It was literally Ethernet cable running from one room to another room, both Xboxes connected, and it was a few of us, man. 4 people in one room, 4 people in the other room. And dude, man, that was awesome, dude. Like, there's something about it, man. Like, I know nowadays, right, you can stream online and like play online, and that's how most people play. But there was something about just physically being there, man. Just kind of getting rowdy, and everybody just kind of, man. We used to talk shit like crazy too. Like, that's the other thing too. We used to like talk a lot of shit to each other. But dude, that was so fun, man. I remember those days. Either way, been playing Halo. Maybe a lot of it kind of reminds me of back then. But man, I've been having a lot of fun playing Halo. It's a fun game, dude. Like, the graphics, like nowadays game graphics are getting like very more realistic and all that stuff. I don't think their graphics are to that level. Like, I don't feel that the graphics are up to date to some of the games that are out that have been releasing lately. But it doesn't matter, man. Like, it's just so fun though, man. It's so fun to play. There's something about it that makes it so fun. So either way, I'll probably be doing that later on tonight around like 12:30, maybe 1 p.m. 1 a.m. Probably stream for about an hour before I go to bed. So, all right, guys. Let me know. I mean, if there's anything else. If not, I'm probably gonna end up calling it a day for my stream. Again, every Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central, I'm gonna be streaming, and it's called Drinking with Lou. And that's what we're going to do, man. We're going to drink. I'm going to be testing new tequilas, new bourbon, new whiskeys. As I test them, I'll kind of give you my feedback on what I think. The drink of choice this week was Cabo Wabo. Here you go. You want to take a look at it? Strongly recommended, dude. I like it. It tastes very good, man. It's $35, so it's not too bad from a price standpoint. Very good price. Worth it. Tastes good. Strongly recommended, dude. I'll be buying this bottle again, that's for sure. But yeah, come back next week, man. We could hang out, we could talk, We're going to talk tech. If you happen to have some code that you want me to review, email it to me, man. You could email it to me anytime during the week, or email it to me right before we stream or while we stream. It doesn't matter. Send it to me. I'd be more than happy to, review it live with everybody if that's the case. And then we could try to fix it and solve the problem, as I stream. Or if not, we're just going to talk tech, right? We could just talk, whatever it is you want to talk about. But again, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Give me a follow if you can. Give me a thumbs up on YouTube. And we'll be on next week.